Mediocre Rumble Brothers.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Mediocre Brothers. Today's episode will be discussing puzzles and video games, but before we do, just make sure you follow us and subscribe on our Spotify, Twitter, YouTube, and Rumble channel. I'm just going to go ahead and hand it over to Udon to take us through. Go ahead, Udon.
Alrighty, well, as anyone listening knows, we are currently working our way through Wind Waker right now, and there's just something that kind of popped into my head since Zelda games are like 90% about puzzles, like, well, 70% puzzles, 20% combat, and 10% bullshit. Because I was also recently watching other people play like actual like games dedicated to puzzles, like their whole point is the puzzle. It's always been funny to think about like what makes a puzzle satisfying to complete and what makes a puzzle complete horseshit, and what people's like perspectives on that would be. So to open the floor, I would want you guys to just think. You don't think too hard about it, just off the top of your head. And when I'm thinking about this, it's puzzles in any game. Zelda has a bunch of puzzles. Even God of War has puzzles, quite a few actually, mostly about kicking rocks, but it has a bunch of puzzles. Think about the puzzles that you've solved without having to use any kind of internet, resource to figure out, and think about just briefly why you think that puzzle worked and what made it satisfying to solve.
Probably this is the first one that came to my head, but Resident Evil 1 in the mansion when you are trying to get the shotgun because you find a shotgun, you pick it up off the thing, the ceiling's coming down or whatever, and you can put it back so you can leave the room safely. But something that you can do later is if you found a broken hunting rifle or shotgun, it's kind of like I wonder if I could put that there, and then sure enough, you swap it out, the weight's the same, and then it doesn't trigger the trap, and you get a really good gun to kind of like move through it. And it's not that complicated of a puzzle, but it is kind of interesting. Like you could go the entire game without getting that at all, basically. It's kind of a nice use of Resident Evil's backtracking with just anything, I guess, because everything in that game requires you to go back. And so finding something that not only is a waste of two inventory spaces, but it rewards you with a gun that you're really going to want later when you have to go up against the hunters. So it's that one was a pretty nice puzzle.
So you think that like how you would articulate it would probably be like it's sort of almost a memory puzzle because you see something in a game that you clearly can't interact with getting a shotgun. You're like, well, I can't get it when I pick up the shotgun, the door closes. So it's like you pick it up, but then you're like, well, you leave it alone because clearly there's nothing you can't do here, and you move on, and then you find the thing that very clearly interacts with the previous thing you found, and you find that satisfying,
Yeah,
just as long as it like relates back to it like strongly.
I mean, it's like a foreshadowing puzzle thing where you just that's going to be important later, and then you find the piece and you remember it, and you're like, oh man, I'm going to run all the way back there and do this thing now. And usually those puzzles don't require you to even solve them. It's just kind of, hey, remember that thing? And movies do this all the time when it like zooms up on the pair of scissors in the Evil Dead Rise or whatever movie, and you're like, oh, someone's going to get those in the face.
I mean, I can agree with you a little bit. Honestly, I feel like I'm the kind of player who, when I do games that have some sort of collectible or like pretty much anything that's put directly in my path, I like to be able to complete it and then move on. Because it sucks trying to interact with something and getting frustrated and putting it down just to realize there really wasn't any reason for me to interact with it. I should have just walked away. Like I look it up and it's like, oh, I'd come back later with the doodad to do the thing. And I thought I could do
Yeah.
this, that, and the other thing. And I'm doing the classic point and click adventure game where it's try everything on everything. And then when you reach the end of your rope, it's like, well, I just wasted an hour. And then you go later, it's like, oh, here's the thing I needed. It's like, well, I'm glad I figured that out, but fuck, I wasted my time.
Whenever you really need to kind of handle those situations delicately, because I would sit there and mess with something, especially if it's like a Metroidvania or a ledge of, and it's a challenge of physics almost, where it's you're not supposed to be up there, but I'm going to try to get up there and I'll spend 40 minutes trying to do it. So if this puzzle doesn't actually have the solution within the room, but they've never kind of indicated that, then I'm going to screw around in that room. And I do feel bad walking away from something. That room doesn't really have a lot of other things in it. And the way that it does the door locked when you pick this up, it kind of says, oh, this is a weight latch. You pick up on it pretty quick. And so it's like, okay, I must have to come back here. And you've seen enough puzzles prior to this moment. It's kind of on par with how Resident Evil presents those things where it's you're introduced to something that you're going to have to come back and deal with because you don't have the right thing for it yet. I mean, every key in that game is basically like that. If for some reason a guy's locked dresser, the key is not in the room where the dresser is.
Yeah,
He
I
like
mean,
left
yeah.
it, it's like, oh, this guy left his dresser key in his lab jacket that's at the Chili's down the street. You're like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's once that happens once in a game, you'll just assume that anytime
Mhm.
you come to a room and you can't solve it. Can bite you in the ass though, because I've had games where that happens and then no, it turns out the solution wasn't there, but I just assumed it wasn't. Then I went back looking for something that didn't exist. But that's why I've appreciated Zelda so much. Between Ocarina of Time, what I have through Wind Waker, and playing through Link's Awakening, I know when I go into a dungeon, not only am I going to use the tool I use to get in the dungeon, there'll be something in the dungeon, like some new tool or power. Once I have, I can 100% the dungeon. Like there's nothing in there I can't solve that isn't within the dungeon. So I know that it's in there somewhere. I have to find it.
Yeah. Yeah, they do a really good job at opening the dungeon up because it kind of like almost baby gates you till you get the item, and then it's like, okay, now you can go have fun. You see all these doors and stuff. It's like that's a switch that I've never seen before. I can't interact with that, or that's something that looks like I can grab it, but I can't reach it from here. But the one path that you can normally get through is solely using the items you have. So it's kind of nice. Every dungeon is like that for Zelda.
What about you, Edwin? Can you think of a puzzle that you found satisfying, and can you think of why?
I mean, I can't really think of one off the top of my head. I just think of like some of the easiest ones and then like some of the hardest ones I've ever tried to do. And I can't really think of one that was super satisfying off the top of my head.
Well, here's one. How about, did you find the sliding floor puzzle in Pokemon Fire Red, Leaf Green, all that? Did you find that aggravating or satisfying?
Which sliding floor puzzle?
When you're in Team Rocket's hideout and there's the sliding floor on the ground and you have to figure out which path to take to get to the end.
I think that was mostly like from memory and just a little bit like a leap of faith kind of situation because you can't see like the end of the puzzle, so you kind of just like have to hope that the arrow takes you low enough to screen that you can see how far or how close you are from the exit that you need to get to. It's kind of like a little bit of a guessing game for that one.
But
I
do you
mean,
find that a poor design choice? Do you think that's unfair?
I don't think it's unfair. I just feel like it's overly simplistic. It's you can kind of just guess your way through it. Just make sure that you don't go through the same one twice.
Well, yeah, I mean, but there's a lot of puzzles that you could technically brute force because I mean, I typically I just got done playing Baldur's Gate, which once we have our next gamer chat episode, get ready for me to take up like 90% of the runtime with that. But there was a puzzle, one of the puzzles where it's like find the pattern of switches you're supposed to do out of like 1 through 9 to like unlock a door in a vault. And clearly I'm supposed to go find like the key to this. And I'm like, well, unless the game, I just took a leap of faith and I'm like, well, unless the game is one of those games where it's not going to let me do it unless I have the key, there's only so many combinations of this there could possibly be. So I started doing the whole 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just keep good doing it until I fucking win. And it worked. It's brute forcing it. It's like it felt satisfying because it feels like I outsmarted the puzzle because I went over its head essentially in a way. That one's an easy one where it's like, well, clearly I need to find the code that's not here. It's going to be somewhere else. But I do appreciate it when a puzzle can let you brute force it in that sense.
Yeah,
But
that's for me. If you can guess your way through a puzzle, that's bad puzzle design, but it does not take away from the satisfactory of you going like, "Ha, I outsmarted you," because they tried to, the developers are trying to kind of block your progress with this puzzle box here, then you just guess the correct answer and then move on. I think the thing that bothers me, like Edwin said, is when you can't see the end of the puzzle. And so, much like the sliding thing, when it slides you up and you're like, oh, this is going to take me to something that goes somewhere else. Like you're just kind of learning how it goes. And then you're like, okay, now I have the right path in my head because, it's up, up, down, whatever. There was a puzzle in Wind Waker that was kind of like this. And I was like, this is kind of stupid. And it's a side thing. Well, it's required, but it's like a little gimmicky puzzle thing where you jump in pots and then you come out of a pot. And if you jump in the wrong pot, it takes you back to the front. But there isn't
Oh,
any
the ghost
indication.
ship.
There's no indication of which is the correct pot to even jump in. It's just completely guessing. And then I got to the last set and I was like, well, I'm just jumping in this pot, but I'm going to be pissed if this takes me all the way back to the beginning again. And then I guessed correctly, but it didn't, I felt good solving the puzzle. It was more of a, I'm just guessing, at this point. Whereas a slide block puzzle or something where, oh, if I do A, then B, and then this works, feels a little bit better. But when you're guessing like a combination, a Resident Evil locker, and you get it right, and the game didn't require you to find the combination first, that also feels really nice because it's the same thing where it's like, you guys tried to block me with this thing, but I didn't find the answer. I guessed the answer and still got in.
Yeah, there's one. Actually, I have two that finally came to mind. Is because I played it recently. Is in the Resident Evil remake in the lake level. There, you have to find three pieces, three stone hexagons to make a full picture. But it's one of those sliding ones where where pieces of the picture are all mixed up. So you have to like twist it into the actual image. And I think the first time that I did it, well, it changes, the difficulty of it changes with the difficulty. So on normal, it's just like you have to flip each of them once. But then if you go on a harder difficulty, you have to do like maybe 6 flips. I tried to do that on like professional mode, so it was much more difficult. After a while of trying to like figure it out like legitimately, I was close, but I couldn't figure it out. So eventually, I ended up just like flipping it randomly, and then eventually got to it. So like, I mean, that it's not super complicated. I'm just not super great at those games. My mom is though. She's solved one of those types of games in one of those types of mini games in Wind Waker for me. It was just a little side mini game she enjoyed. The other one was it was in the Mass Effect when we actually played it. It was you have to move all 5 squares.
Oh yeah, you have to basically move all the squares from one side of the thing to the other, and they go in like certain sequences, like, and you have to move it all the way across the screen. I fucking hate those.
Yeah, it was like the first time I tried to do it, and then eventually I got annoyed, and then used the 100 Omni
Omni gel.
Omni gel thing to skip it. And then I that was like dissatisfying, but the only reason I skipped it is because I wasn't reading the instructions correctly. Because I didn't know where I was supposed to put all the squares, but like I had to like look it up online, not for the answer, but to like for like what I was actually supposed to do. I thought I had to like split the boxes between the second and third, but I just had to move all the boxes out of the first one into the 2 or 3. So it's like that was just like either bad wording on the game or just me not being illiterate.
Yeah, I hate those ones though, because I have a hard time wrapping my brain around like when you hit something, it does this, but then you hit this next one, it affects this, and it also might affect the thing you just hit, and it's just like, okay, you've already lost me. Like I can't take that kind of shit. What about you, Jordan? Can you think of a puzzle that satisfied you?
I was thinking different. Like for instance, the Silent Hill 2 for PS2. The one that I did like was when you were doing I can't remember if it was a cabinet or whatever, that you had to insert the coins in the right order in order for it to unlock. It was in the apartments. And
on the story.
yeah, so I just pulled up one right here. So when you're playing normal, it would be basically saying there's 3 bright coins in 5 holes, and the sentence would be saying, at one end sits the seducer of she, the wind from behind the woman doth play. The formless one, null, lies furthest from thy. The old one beside the serpent sits not. 'Tis to the prisoner's left that his doth rot. And it was basically talking about the seducer from Adam and Eve, the snake seducing Eve to eat the apple from the Garden of Eden. And so you just had to figure out the line of where you're going to have it placed, which would be the first, the third, and the fifth, to do the old man, the snake, and the prisoner, in order for that to be aligned correctly, in order for it to open. So as long as you read it correctly, you knew how to set the coins in the right order, and I thought that was pretty cool when you got it unlocked and done. But if it was something more simple, just like those Breath of the Wild, puzzles, they're very simplistic, but at the same time they use the mechanics of, basically your magnesis. You're like grabbing metal doors and you assign them to the right spot, or you're shooting fire arrows to burn the leaves that unlocks and drops certain things. Is like those kind of things that you got more immersed in because you're using those special abilities that you got, and it tests you and how you were going to use it. moving balls in the right spot to place them on weights to unlock treasure chests and stuff. It's like stuff like that that was really cool. But the Silent Hill 2 one was really cool because it obviously required a lot more thought and process of what you were going to do, reading it to yourself and seeing exactly how it was actually going to be put on the coins. And if it didn't work, then you obviously knew that there was something that you were missing that you didn't understand right, so you're trying to reread it again, and you eventually get it, and it just felt satisfying.
Yeah, Silent Hills puzzles do have a little bit more layers to them when it comes to the solution, rather than it just being a standard slide block puzzle.
I
There's
think
nothing
it's
really
relative. I
coming to
think
my
a
head right
relatively
now.
simple one was the Moth Wings one, because at the end of the day it was just math.
Oh yeah,
Because it was, but I also like that one because math as a puzzle is just kind of fun to me. But that was a simple one where it was just like, here's the patterns. Each pattern correlates to a number, and then you have to count how many patterns there are, and also account. But the thing is, the fun intuitive thing about that one was that throws you a curveball by some of the wings being ripped in half, and you're like, oh, do I have to interpret that as half of that value? And you do. And that one felt satisfying for me specifically because I was like, oh, that's cool. That's really intuitive. I would have that tracks basically.
yeah.
Well, like
I like the puzzle in was it Resident Evil Village? This is a lot of Resident Evil and Silent Hill talk, but I mean it's kind of
Well, they
nature of
have
the
a
beast.
bunch of they have a bunch of
Yeah,
puzzles and they're pretty good.
in the village where you do the ball in the puzzle box thing, where it's basically just that mini game that you have where you roll them.
Oh yeah, I like those too.
Yeah, those are designed pretty well. They're kind of fun.
Sorry, what were you gonna try and say, Jordan?
I was just gonna say, like, it was funny, like what I just read to you guys. That was normal, and then when we got to like the hardest difficulty, it's basically
Uh,
a paragraph.
so those are a couple examples of pretty good puzzles. Now I know this is probably gonna be easier. Think about something that you thought was complete horseshit, and why you think the solution was
Water
like
temple.
why you thought the solution. I'm not saying aggravating because you have to take the boots on and off every 2 seconds. That's not a puzzle, that's just stupid. But think of a puzzle that you got really frustrated trying to figure out what the fuck the solution was, and when you looked it up, you're like, how the fuck was I ever supposed to figure that out? Like, ever.
I think a puzzle that comes to mind right now is it's frustrating mostly because it's Hideo Kojima being super creative. But in Metal Gear Solid, the last puzzle that you do is you have to use a key card because they keep hinting at 3 key cards.
Oh yeah.
And then Snake's like, where are the other cards? And then it's like, they're all the same card. You just have to scan one and then get one or go get one cold and then get one hot. And then when it's hot, it's on a timer, and when it's cold, it's on a timer for you to run all the way back to the place. And the reason why this puzzle is kind of horseshit is because you have to stand in the fridge area for an undisclosed amount of time until the item itself that you have to have. I don't know if you have to have it equipped, but the item's graphic will change to the card that you need, so either hot or cold, and then you have to run all the way back. But the fridge area is almost in the very beginning of the game, and there really isn't any type of fast travel. And so it's not hard to really navigate, but there's still enemies and bullshit in the way between the end area, like the final room, and the area where you get the card cold. And if you get bad RNG in any way, the card will go back to normal temperature. And then you have to walk back and do it again. But there is no other way around it.
Now, but the thing is, if I remember correctly, we're talking about the first Metal Gear Solid, right? If I remember
Yes.
correctly, that was the part where you had to get the key cards to unlock the Metal Gear codes or whatever.
Yeah, and then
Um,
you get Metal Gear Rex out and you fight him after that.
Now that was pretty late in the game, and if I remember correctly, Metal Gear has a lot of like. Again, I was impressed with this game for being on the PS1. Like a lot of logic based stuff. Like it's like, does this work? And a lot of the time, surprisingly, it does. And that was late in the game. So are you saying that like? Because I'm pretty sure in that puzzle or in the cutscene, either I think Otacon or Snake, someone mentions the like temperature changes of how it changes like the codes to the key codes. Do you think it's unfair to assume that to go back to like sitting in the fridge at that point in the game is out there?
I mean, it's not that it doesn't make sense the way that how Metal Gear kind of presents every solution is almost like, oh, I didn't get the infrared goggles, but if I equip cigarettes, then my smoke will show me where the lasers are and all that types of stuff. Like, it's really interesting how they kind of present all these outcomes. The only reason why I think it's frustrating is because it's just a long ass walk. To me, it's like we're at the finish line, but you made me walk all the way back to the beginning area of the game just for this puzzle. Or in the payoff, like, do I really need to walk all the way back to come back here just to click a button? You could have presented this in any other way. You could have let me go up to like a fire extinguisher or some sort of like cryo thingy and shoot it, and it sprays you and makes the card cold or something. But instead, you have game padding by making me backtrack at the very end and then walk all the way back here. It's kind of like
So
that other mission in Metal Gear where you're carrying the bomb and you can't run or jump or something, or if you get shot, you blow up. Or no, that's the room where you can't shoot anything because it'll blow up. I remember listening to Jordan play that shit for a good amount of time.
Oh yeah, fuck that.
So is it a real so in the end is it actually a complaint about the puzzle or a complaint about the pacing of the game then? Like cuz it sounds like coming to the conclusion that you need to get it cold and that there was a freeze at the beginning of the game was a conclusion that was reasonable to get to. It was just aggravating having to backtrack that far to actually do it.
I think it's mostly like frustrating me because it slows down my like I'm right there, let's do this, and it's like, hold on, I gotta fucking walk all
Let's
the way
do
back to the
this.
beginning. Yeah, thanks, please.
Um I'm never I'm never not going to hear that ever. Well, that being said, I think I'll even keep using Metal Gear as an example. I think it's clever at the end of the day, but I do think it's a bit unreasonable for somebody to look on the fucking jewel case of the game for the solution to a puzzle when the one dude's saying that the code to get to contact Meryl's on the box. And
Oh
like,
yeah,
yeah, I jumped to that immediately, but it's only because I found that so esoteric as like a fucking clue that even Snake was like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" And then he just, narratively, he just somehow magically figures out the code in his head for her number on the comm system.
back to the game box.
But
Yeah.
yeah, because after you figure it out, it is kind of fun because you're like, wow, a game's never done that before. But it's like, wow, I'm really glad I jumped to that conclusion because how the fuck was I supposed to get there?
Well, if you bought the games digitally on like PS3, then you'd either have to just look it up online, and like kind of ruins the like fun part of that, where you're like, wait a second, didn't I see a picture of this on the back? Like, it's cool, and that's the only time we'll ever get to use that in any game.
Yeah, I
Didn't
think
like some people like try and guess the answer from like zero or like the lowest call number that you can get, and then just going one digit up and testing each number.
Can It's gonna take a while,
Yeah,
but I
I
mean,
think that's what you said. Like some people had to do that because they couldn't figure it out.
you
yeah.
can brute force that one, but that one has too many numbers for me to try and brute force. It's like, yeah, I could, but I'm gonna be here a while longer than I'd like. I think some of the puzzles in God of War were really
Yeah.
frustrating, just because they're all like really like I think near the beginning of the game when you're trying to get Zeus's lightning bolt and you had to use like the ballista to break down doors, but the ballista's like in this like complete opposite room and you have to like drag it all the way over there. I feel like it's times when a game mechanic sneaks up on me that was either severely underutilized or like not utilized at all up until this point. Because like I think up until that point, all you did with Kratos was kick boxes. But then like, oh, I can pull this giant fucking ballista, and then it's like, oh, I have to pull it all the way over here, and you almost think that's not the solution because of how far the distance is. And you're like, no, I was actually supposed to do that, and I was just like, I don't like. I guess I could have figured that out, but I just find it frustrating that was a solution because it was like not
Hmm.
congruent at all. Like it was two things in totally different locations, basically. Also, the whole like having to use the contraption to turn the damn thing around. It's like Kratos, you can fucking drag it, just turn the damn thing. I know you're
Kratos
strong
can
enough
do
to
a
do that.
lot of shit, and then you're seeing him fuck with a puzzle sometimes. I'm like, just break it.
Yeah,
And
just
to
smash it in
preface, we're
half.
talking about original God of War.
Yes.
Um, yeah, and I would say that I mean I loved playing through that game. That it's surprisingly super fun. I hate every time-based puzzle in that game, I think.
Yes, that was
Especially the one with the spike floor,
yes,
and
the
you have to
spike
kick the
floor
goddamn
and the
box.
yeah, the spike floor with the kicky box and the changing camera angles. Like we can jump into that just briefly too. So like that's a platforming puzzle, almost it's also a timing challenge. But like holy fuck, again, that's one that you have to get so close and do so precisely that you almost think you cheated the game and not actually realizing that was the solution to the entire thing.
Yeah, the
Was
margin of error is like half a second.
yes,
It's crazy.
yeah, that one sucked. Edwin, can you think of a horrible puzzle that you hated?
There's like some puzzles that are in there, but like this is like how quickly I gave up on Professor Layton because type of puzzles that I do hate more, one of them being slightly more satisfying while the other one is just being very infuriating to like actually try and do. I just don't like riddle puzzles because it's just infuriating just trying to figure it out, or it's like something you like never really heard of sometimes. So it's just really hard to like because it's like from your own base understanding, especially when it's like not something that was related to a video game or something that not related into the video game or like not mentioned unless you look at some obscure thing at some other point of level. While they can be annoying, they are somewhat satisfying to do. Are like optical illusion puzzles. But there is like a game like I do like puzzles in video games, but like I cannot I'm not smart enough to do any puzzles in Professor Layton because I gave up on like the third puzzle, which was specifically it's called the Professor Layton and the Curious Village. The third puzzle is called Strange Hats, and basically you have to figure out you have to figure out which top hat has the same length of brim from one end to the other. So when I was younger, I thought that it was talking about from the center out to the brim. So I didn't understand like none of these hats even show the exact length because like it's like shown like it's just like front facing of each hat, but I didn't really understand what it was asking of me. So but it was actually meant from one end of the brim to the other end, and then that's like what you have to measure for like the length of the hat because it even as it says I mean the first hint is like not really super helpful. It's just saying take your time and just take a closer look. It's like yeah no shit that's what I'm already doing. Why is that the first hint that I have to pay a coin for? But I was like I after that one I was like it was so simplistic that I felt like more of an idiot than when I was actually doing the puzzle. When it actually solved it, that I gave up. I was like, this is clearly not a type of game for me. But the puzzles are really well done, but I think for me they're a little too well done that I can't solve it myself.
Now, did you buy that game on your own, or was that like gifted to you?
It was our cousin who had it because she had most of the Professor Layton games. Andy got really into it, and then they're like, "Oh, well, two people in this family are into it, so I thought I might as well take a crack at it." And then I was like, "Well, it took a crack at my own brain. That's some difficult
Well,
shit."
the question I'm leading into is that did you know going into it that was the game? It was just a puzzle game. It was all
Yeah,
that's like all the game was.
yeah. I was like, I mean, I like puzzle games. Like, I even enjoy like The Witness, but it's like there's like The Witness is like more simplistic than this because Professor Layton is like every type of puzzle that you can think of in like each genre of it, like optical illusions, riddles, some math, some measuring, things like that, and then like some shadow games and things like that. It's like and it has like every type of game in there. So it's like while I was intrigued, I didn't know exactly how difficult it would actually be to solve any of it. So it was like, oh, this is much harder than I thought it would be. I don't know. I think I'd spend more time being angry at the game than I would be enjoying it.
And we'll get into puzzle games specifically a little bit later. But Jordan, hit me with your best salty puzzle.
The one that I keep thinking about is in Silent Hill 2. And I don't know if anybody else had it. I mean, I was playing the PS2 version. I know you guys were playing like the remakes and stuff, but I don't know if it was included in those. When you're in the prison, you have to melt a wax figure, pour it into a spot to basically use it like a lever, kind of, and attach a horseshoe to it. And then that would help you pry open the latch, the compartment, to let you go downstairs or to go beneath underground, and you would only be able to do that if you did that. I never thought of that at all was a solution, because you'd find this wax figure that was in the cell, you take it, and apparently you're supposed to melt it into the spot, because it keeps talking about there's a spot here you need to use to grab for a handle, but it's missing. I'm like, okay, well, and I kept looking around and around trying to see if I could find a fucking handle, and eventually I ended up get tired of it, and I look online and find out that it's like, you're supposed to melt it, put it in that little spot, and then you attach the horseshoe, and then that acts as the handle, and you pry it open. And I was like, that's ridiculous. I was also going to add a second one to that, was when you're in the hospital, and then you're supposed to basically get some keys that are down a drain that you can't reach, and you're supposed to use a bent fish, or use a fish hook and some hair, and you tie
Wait.
it, and then you're able to get
Silent Hill
this key.
2?
Yeah.
Or,
Silent
no,
Hill.
that's Silent Hill 3.
No.
Because I remember you're in the mall doing.
No,
Anyway,
Silent Hill 2 is
I-
when you're in the hospital. There's this green gook shit that's in this bathroom looking like place, and you have to find a fish hook and a line of hair. You tie it, and then you pour
Oh.
it down the drain, and then you grab keys.
Okay, because I was just picturing that when I was watching you streaming playing Silent Hill 3.
Well, that one was
And
stupid.
you-
That was when you had to get tongs, and you had to grab a pair of keys through a fucking crate. A wooden
Yeah, it
crate
was
that
like
you
a
could literally
pallet or something.
Yeah,
and it's
pallet.
like,
that you
stick
could
your hand in
reach your
there.
hands and grab it. No, I need tongs. I was like, this is fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I remember what you're talking about now, the fish hook thing, because it was just like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, there was no way I was going to wrap my hand around it to say that either of those were going to work. It was just like a little string of hair was going to support the weight of keys, okay? And then the other one was, I'm going to melt this wax figure into the spot and then use a horseshoe as a handle. Like that's
This wax is very strong for prying.
correct. And it was a heavy ass door that I knew it probably didn't weigh more or less than probably 50 pounds, but that wax could support it. And I was like, okay, this makes no sense.
I do like the mechanic of combining or inspecting items, though. That's kind of fun, and I appreciate Silent Hill for not having a limited size inventory.
Well, to be fair, James doesn't carry. Well, I'm just gonna say James is the only Silent Hill I played, but he doesn't carry a whole lot with him. I don't know where he keeps that iron pipe, but everything else is stuff that you can fit in your
Well,
pockets.
Based on the gameplay, he keeps that pipe in their face.
Yeah. You danced around it there, but when it comes to like the implementation of puzzles in like the narrative or realism, and I feel like Silent Hill 2, as much as I do like the game, as much as I do like the puzzles, really guilty of this, because I mean, James just walks into Silent Hill, finds a bar with his broken jukebox, and just decides to fix it for no reason at all, really. Like he has no idea this is going to help him. He just does it. It's a nice little intro puzzle, but James really has no reason to interact with it at all. I don't understand why. Or even like you said, like you could easily get through some of these obstacles by just reaching your hand through. When he dropped the what was it, there was some keys he needed to get through a grate, and the little girl kicked him away, and he's like, "Oh, I can't reach him." I'm like, just pull out your board, scrape it towards you. Like, come on.
You use your jacket.
Yeah,
Like,
I think it's puzzles that like you have to make this like weird leap of logic, and not for the narrative. Sorry, I'm jumping to something different, but like a weird leap of logic to like be like, oh, that's what I was supposed to do. I didn't even think that can interact that way, or some such nonsense like that really aggravates me. Or I also feel like Breath of the Wild is particularly guilty of this. I don't like physics-based puzzles. They're fun when you get them to work. I think their issue is that if there are physics-based, you could be doing the right thing just in the wrong way. And if you're doing it too long like that, you're going to start to assume you're doing the wrong thing. So then you're going to go away from the right thing and start really doing the wrong thing, all because you had something like slightly not in the spot it was supposed to be. Or it's like it's almost like with any puzzle, you look up you get frustrated and you look up the answer and you're like, oh, I was doing the right thing, but this was like 2 centimeters to the left, so I just need to move this. Like, I'm glad I got it right, but I'm pissed off that was even a thing that could go wrong.
I'll go back to the Silent Hill stuff, but first, physics-based puzzles for Breath of the Wild. The thing I enjoy about them the most is the fact that I can just like YOLO my way through a bunch of shit sometimes, and I almost feel like that's more satisfying than doing it the way that it's presenting itself. usually the name of the shrine's kind of indicating it's like the one with the two bridges, and then there's two platforms and like two lanes of water, and you're like, oh, duh. No, I built a catapult to throw my ass all the way over there. And like that's kind of, I mean, that's just gameplay, right? Where it makes it a little bit more fun for you to kind of engage with this problem. And it's like this is the way you're supposed to do it, but you can kind of do it however you want. It does kind of take away from the puzzles of that game though, because the answer is whatever you want it to be, and so it kind of defeats the purpose of a puzzle having different shaped pieces. You just kind of jam them all in there, and whatever the hell the
This
whatever
square
it is.
piece will fit in this round
Yeah.
hole. God damn it!
But for
I mean,
like
it has
Silent
plenty of
Hill,
results.
yeah, for Silent Hill and games like Resident Evil and Fatal Frame and all of those, they
There's a lot of
con-
puzzles in survival horror.
yeah, well, so yeah, that's basically the big part, right? It's context clues for the most part, and when you have puzzles that require you to combine items, the context clues, like, because James will pick up something and he won't verbally go, "Wow, this looks meltable." Like, you just have to go to your inventory, look through your shit, and then it's, I have a lighter, a candle, and then you inspect the candle. It's like, maybe I can melt this down, but he won't say that unless you do that part. But some things don't make sense, and then some things do make sense. Like hospice care. Is it a hospice care center at the end of the second game? Where you
Yeah,
have to
yeah,
put the ballerina pieces together and then kind of move them in order so that they can do their dance and land in their appropriate doors.
yeah. The
Like
mermaid and
that
stuff.
puzzle is kind of fun. But then you have these puzzles that are designed specifically to make the player think, and it's in context of the game, kinda, because they're just fucking weird. But when you have to find it's like, oh, this is a room that has a light bulb, but the light bulb's broken. So you find a light bulb, but it doesn't do anything because you got to find red paint, then dip the light bulb in it, then put the light
Yeah.
bulb in, and then the red paint illuminates the wall. And it's just kind of like,
Light bulb
why?
in a tin can that you have to get open with fucking can opener. I was like,
Yeah,
why
I
is
just
a light
remember-
bulb in here?
Well,
Yeah.
in like that is if that was the best solution for getting the player from this, I guess, story gate to the next story gate.
One
it-
cutscene to the next.
yeah, it's kind of like okay, but at the same time, when I think of things like options, and this is like the Metal Gear part, I guess. But if it's like, oh, this door requires a special key, and then you find a note that says, oh, I always keep my special key in this box, but the box's combination is my birthday backwards, and then you look around in the room and find like their birthday, and then it's like, okay, the last four digits of the thing, flip it over, got the key. If I want to break the door down with a pipe, then you also could give the player kind of a, well, that door would have saved you from something later, but you chose to break it down. And so that could have been an interesting play on how to approach doors that are locked with keys. When you, the player, go, James is like a brick shit house out here. He's beating the hell out of everything. You think he can't beat a door down?
Yeah.
Like-
And he's
like-
knocking walls down half the game, anyways.
Yeah, that's another thing. If he's breaking a wall down, but he can't break a door, it's like, okay, that kind of doesn't make sense, but we'll go with it here. But, I think that there's other solutions. Granted, Silent Hill 2 was a PS2 game, but when you're talking about the remake, and they're not going to change it that much, but, Resident Evil, when they did their remake and they added Crimsons can break the door down to the room that you're in, where usually you run from a zombie and it's like, oh, the zombie's in the hallway and I got away. But if he's a Crimson and he's running down the hallway and you go into a room last minute, they're beating on the door and you see the door kind of shaking, and they can break the door down and come in that room and get you. So like, I kind of like that aspect of, well, you didn't deal with the zombie when you should have, and now it's biting you in the ass. I feel like that should happen a little bit more in just survival horror games in general, I suppose.
To take it back to Silent Hill, I just remembered a puzzle that really pissed me off because it was like, in my mind, barely qualifies as a puzzle. And even though in hindsight, the solution was, I guess, obvious, it didn't make much sense. So I believe because I'm still not done with the game. I'm like right on the cusp of it, but I need to find a day with me and Tim to finally finish it. You're locked in a cell in the crazy people house, and it's a room full of the cockroach creatures, and you have to put a number in on the keypad of the door.
Oh yeah,
And
they're tagging you.
yeah, and they're attacking you this whole time. So when I got locked in that room, my first instinct was like, okay, well, in other rooms in the game that are locked to get out of, you look around the room and there's like clues around to tell you, like, and it's a really small fucking room because it's a cell.
Mhm.
And when you move your light around, the cockroaches on the walls go away from the light. So I was assuming I had to sweep my light around the room to find like some scribble markings on the wall to figure out like what the code is. And I kept doing that over and over, and the entire time I'm getting fucking molested by these little fucking bugs taking my health away and start using some health items. I'm like, this is fucking bullshit. Because I was sat there for like minutes on end trying to figure out what the fuck I was supposed to do. And I keep looking at the keypad being like, I just started typing in random shit until I'm like, fuck. And it's kind of sad because it was the first puzzle, quote unquote, that we had to pause the game and look up, because until then, me and Tim were just figuring them out by ourselves. And it turns out when you look at the keypad, you'll notice that some of the numbers are worn. So those are the numbers you have to hit. Not even like, it's still a guessing game because you have to figure out what order to hit them in, but those are the numbers you have to hit because, you know, when you use it a bunch, it's going to wear down the number paint on them. And I'm like, okay, I get the logic behind that. However, number one, this is a fucking cell. Why is the keypad to open the door on the inside of the cell? Like, it doesn't make any fucking sense. And like, this is the first time that, like, why would the cockroaches move away from my light other than just a pretty visual effect? Well, pretty in quotation marks. And I guess it's all it was, because not only that, because like, even if I did figure it out, yeah, I'd still have to sit there and fucking just guess, you know, brute force number game until the door opened. I'm like, that's not even a fucking puzzle. That's just fucking bullshit. I'm like, I get how I was expected to reach the conclusion there, but it just didn't match any other time in the game where you're like put in a room and have to get out. And it's just like, it just didn't match. And I'm just like, this is silly. This is nonsense. That one really ticked me off. I was like, this is bullshit. But anyways, so we can move on from that into puzzle games. And it's kind of funny because we're talking a lot about survival horror games, but they just typically have a bunch of puzzles in them to break up the combat sections. But as Edwin just said, he doesn't hate puzzle games. I know probably someone like Jordan probably doesn't love them. Am I right, Jordan? Do you like a straight up puzzle game?
No.
Would you go
No.
into a game? Okay.
No.
And that being said, you still like games like Zelda. So what is the difference there? Is it just the fact that it's not totally focused on puzzles, even though that technically is the majority of the game that allows you just have breaks from them that lets you tolerate it, or is it something else?
Oh no, it's definitely the environment. So, like for instance, if you were to play a full-fledged puzzle game like Myst or something like that, I would not be involved in it at all, just because again, there's no sense of action. Nothing is really happening. So you're just looking around doing this. So, you know, these video games like Zelda, you kind of want to break from the constant action, and so that you're finally able to basically take ease of what's going on and use your brain a little bit and be able to figure out some stuff. But the environment stuff is there. It's not too complicated. It's pretty simple, you know, so I don't find it too much of an issue. It's only like, I can't remember if it's the Earth Temple or the Wind Temple in Wind Waker. And there was a spot where you're supposed to be controlling these idols or whatever, and they have them follow you around. There was one spot.
There's a Temple of the Gods.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, Temple of the Gods. Okay, so there's one specific spot where basically I was going through and I was solving it all, and it was working out well. There was only one issue that I was having, which was you have it follow you, and you're going around with these zigzag, you know, walking across the bridge until you get to the other side, and you're supposed to get it across. There's a big gap. So my head is, okay, I'm going to pick him up, throw him. Doesn't make it. Okay, I need to possibly get closer, like close to the edge, throw it. Doesn't work. Okay, there's got to be somewhere, maybe there's a closer spot, maybe there's something I'm missing. I need to figure out possibly how to throw this across because I have to get him over there. It eventually got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to look online and figure out what this is. And lo and behold, you pick up the idol and you jump across with it. That doesn't work for me. That didn't make any sense, because literally it's like, if anybody's gonna say anything, you're gonna throw something, you're not going to run and jump with the object in your hands, because you will not go as far. You will have to throw it. Then there would be no such thing as throwing events, because then why would you do that when you could just jump? So that was the only thing that kind of threw me off. But it was like the environment itself is not complicated. There's interesting things that are about those puzzles that keep you, you know, engaged. You're not strictly held to a puzzle, and it's not as frequent and crazy as it would sound like. But you know, you do a lot of the battling and stuff, and then you're kind of tired of that. So it gives you a little bit of cut and paste of what you're doing and to go around. And like I said, the puzzles aren't complicated. They're very easy to figure out. It was only that one really that threw me for a loop that I just really didn't understand how that was. But then again, a lot of video games tend to have those kind of things, like we just said with the wax thing. You just gotta get used to sometimes that they might not be the way that you want it to be. You just gotta be more creative and think outside the box, basically, because maybe it's not necessarily that you have to be so hooked on to reality of how things are supposed to work, but this is a different world. This is make-believe. You need to just think outside the box and try to figure out the puzzle. And that's kind of like for me, which it worked out. I liked them. They're really good games, and I haven't had any issues with them.
So it's definitely more just like the fact that it's not the focus of the game,
Right.
and not only it's not the focus, it's that they're not totally melt your brain kind of puzzles. It's like
Right.
it's pretty. Like I said earlier, Zelda gives you all the tools you need to solve it. You just have to figure out how the pieces fit together within the dungeon.
Right, it's more of a side mission than anything. It's not the main quest. It's just something you can do on the side before you're getting to the main mission. You have to do these, and that kind of makes the way of the journey that much more greater when you get there. It's like, I had to go through all this, and I finally got to the boss, and then it makes you feel that good when you're ready to approach the boss because you did all this to get there.
Now, I might be talking out of my ass here, but I know I've played a little bit of Yakuza 0. I haven't. I probably made like maybe a quarter of the way through the game, but that game has a lot of side content, and from my experience, a lot of the side missions are actually a lot of like logic puzzles, if I can say that. It's like the game presents you with like someone having a problem, and based on the context clues of the situation, you have to select the correct dialogue option to reach like a resolution of something in order to get a reward for it. Now, do you like that in a game like Yakuza, where it's definitely like a side thing, or do you just choose to ignore that kind of stuff?
Well, so it's like kind of a bit of both, just because the storyline is just, it's really good. I mean, it's also really zany. You know, it's got all that crazy stuff that's not your typical normal video game. They always add a lot of comedy into it that makes it fun. But the side missions themselves, yes, they do happen to have some thought behind it, where you need to memorize or remember things that they said, where you need to go or collect in order to get things done. The only issue I had with it was, like how we just talked about Zelda, it was a side quest thing that you would do to get to the main quest. They force you to do these side quests, and I know that that's like the same thing as Zelda. They do that. You can't go through the dungeon unless you accomplish these quests or these puzzles. But this one, it's like they feed you one, and you're like, okay, that was good. Then they feed you another, and you're like, okay, well, then maybe that's it. And then they feed you another, and then another, and then you're just like, now you're forgetting what the main quest is all about, because you've been doing so many side quests, because that's the only way it's going to allow you to actually progress forward, is that you eventually do enough side quests that it's going to be like, oh, by the way, there's this part that you need to now take care of. It's like, oh, that was the part of the main quest. I couldn't get through this one spot because it was blocked by these cars, or I didn't get the phone call. I had to wait for my pager to go off until I got the results of what I was supposed to do next. So until that time, I have to burn off these minutes of mine, or say hours, maybe even days, to get all this stuff taken care of first, and then I can move on with the story. There is always going to be such things as too much of something, and that's where there's a huge difference between the Yakuza and the Zelda, where, like I said, the Zelda, you have the puzzle. It can be a little bit annoying here and there sometimes, but it's not a lot. It's very easy. It's very digestible. You can get squared away with it and move on. It shoves it down your throat until you're kind of just tired of it. And then sometimes I had to take several days or a week off from the game, because it was just like, dude, there's too many side quests. Like, I want the story. I don't give a shit about this stuff. I mean, it's fun for like the couple times, but it's been consistently happening. I don't even remember what the story's about. I like a refresher, and it sucks. So, and it's the same thing still going on Yakuza 1 too, which was also another huge letdown. I was like, oh man, I really thought that they would have fixed this. But it's something that they still are continuing to doing, and I have not picked up Yakuza 1 maybe 2 months now. It's 2 or 3 months. It's been very long, because it was very aggravating, and that's kind of the thing where I'm talking about. It's just like, it's too much in order for it to be just simply a side quest. It is like a marathon, and you're just tired of it. So yeah, there is some logic behind it, but then there's some times where it's just way too much, and now you're not even feeling like you're playing the game anymore. You're playing some DLC or something that just sucks.
So it's kind of like because Zelda's dungeons are integrated into its main gameplay loop, and the fact that you have the solution within your hands in every dungeon. Because I know, again, I'm trying to use my limited knowledge of Yakuza to make a conclusion, but Yakuza, a lot like 90% of the side quests have virtually nothing to do with the main story, and they're
Correct.
supposed to be fun little side things, but at the same time, a lot of them there's not even any fighting involved. You're just talking to people a lot. Like I remember specifically one, I think you were shooting some kind of fucking commercial and you had to like
Fight these
you're shooting a
acting
commercial.
zombies. Yeah.
Oh wait, no, not that one. The one
Oh.
where you had to like you're taking camera shots of like food or something on a table and you had to keep like arranging them in like a certain
Oh,
order. And all it
yeah.
was like logic. Like that's all you were just having. You're just selecting things on a menu and you had to select the right one to progress based on context clues and whatnot. Like it's a
Yes.
completely separate part of the game and it didn't take an insignificant amount of time. Like like that little thing just kept going on and on and on for me. So is that kind of like what you're getting at? Because the fact that it's not integrated with really the main gameplay loop, it's almost like this separate thing, and you're not getting any of like the main part of the game done. You feel like it's more homework than like actually enjoying it as like the main part of the game.
Correct. Yeah, yeah. Because yeah, as you're going through the dungeons and stuff, you know this is going to lead you to something. It's actually making sense of how this is all supposed to work through. Because again, these puzzles are a part of the structure. In order for you to progress further into the structure, you need to complete these puzzles. As Yakuza, it is side missions like I just brought up, which is you find Spielberg in Japan and he's making a dance video. I believe they don't name him, but it's Michael Jackson, and he's doing a music video. They don't call it Thriller, they call it something else, and you're defending him from these zombie actors that are coming at him, and you're fighting them until he reaches the end, and then you get him on your team to help you with selling property. Like it just does. It's like what the fuck? Like it just weird shit, and it's like consistent, and it's like okay, well that didn't take that long. It's the fact that you have to literally walk your ass all the way around this map. It's not massive, but there is not really any quick like teleport me here or there. You have to literally run your ass all the way to the other side, and while you're doing it, you're constantly getting encountered with gang members or just these punk kids or something that just want to beat your ass, and it cuts in and then you have to fight them. Like sometimes you can't even like run past them because they'll automatically cut scene and you're in a fight, and then you have to deal with that shit. So you're always eating up time and you just want to get it done with, but it's consistently happening. So it's like that versus Zelda, there's a big difference.
All right, there we go. I'm trying to think of. I just had we got. It wasn't really sidetracked, but after getting that conversation, my brain kind of hit the wall in terms of where I was going to go next with everything. Do you, like how do you? I guess. Do you think that every puzzle in a game should always incorporate everything you've learned in that game up until that point? Or something like that should be saved as like a gauntlet at the end of the game. I guess to put an example towards you. Again, I'm going back to Zelda, but that's also what prompted this entire conversation. I'm in the Temple of the Gods now, and I was just trying to figure out this simple puzzle where I had to get to the little stone dude across these two laser beams, and just X, Y. Up until this point, you've been heavily using the grapple hook, the Wind Waker to control the rock dudes, and the bow that you just got in this dungeon, and bombs. But when you got to this room, none of those things worked on anything, and it's a room you can't bring anything into. And you had to get to the other side of these laser beams to get to the rock dude. And I wasn't really getting frustrated per se. I was just kind of reached the end of my rope, and I was like, "Well, I don't know. I've tried. Felt like I've tried everything with everything shtick. So I'm gonna have to look up how people do it." And sure enough, I looked it up, and it turns out I wasn't using like the one thing in my arsenal that I hadn't used up until that point. Like not even getting to this island hardly, or even any at all until in this dungeon till this point was the Deku Leaf, and you just had to use the Deku Leaf to float over the laser beams. And I'm like, oh, well, in hindsight, that makes perfect sense because there's this little platform on the other end of the room that I thought was like a square I could push off and onto the button to stop the lasers, but that wasn't the case. But after learning that, I'm like, oh, I'm the silly one. Because I'm like, oh, that was like the one thing in my bag I didn't even try to use. I kind of forgot it existed because I hadn't used it the entire dungeon up until this point. Now, do you think in a situation like that, do you think that's fair for the player to ask, or the game to ask that of the player just kind of out of nowhere? Because I'm like almost 3/4 of the way into the dungeon, and then suddenly I have to use the Deku Leaf, and then I'm not using it again. Granted, I mean, like I said, I already admitted it's kind of my fault. I felt like I should have, but what do you guys feel about something in that situation? Do you feel like it's fair to ask that of the player in like every dungeon, but or not?
I feel like that happens a lot to me because a lot of times, even for like the simplest puzzles, I end up overthinking it or I miss something extremely insignificant. But there's also a lot of situations across like even like from Paper Mario to like Resident Evil, then like also especially like Zelda, Breath of the Wild, and Tears of the Kingdom. I forget what I actually have in my inventory or what abilities I can use because it's like those games are like have like such a long series of games that you forget what abilities are in which games and which one you have in your possession right at that moment because there's sometimes like large points where you don't use that one item or that one ability and then you just forget you have it entirely and then they're like oh now after like 2 hours of playing you finally forced me to use that one thing that I haven't used for said 2 hours. So a lot of times, like there's a puzzle where it says like, "Oh, you need that one thing in order to solve it." And I was like, "What was that one thing, and what did it do again?" And it's just like the some funny situations like that happen to me a lot.
I think it does is a good idea to have it just because just from my own experience of it, if it was that you would get comfortable with everything going in the way it was, that you're just using the same thing over and over, I kind of feel like it might make the player feel a little bit high in monotony, like where it's just like it's consistently the same thing over and over, and you're just like, okay, next puzzle, hook shot, okay, other puzzle, okay, hook shot. You just keep doing it. Like, it really would be kind of interesting if they designed it a little bit more different, and maybe I can use one of these other items instead. So it's like they will add the difference that are there, and later in the game you will see that too, where they actually will take away certain things from your inventory and force you to use the other items that you may have not been using as much before, and it will put you in a scenario where you have to use it strategically in order for you to accomplish what you need to do to get up to the other side. And I thought that was actually kind of nice. So you would be going to this gauntlet, and then you'd be like, okay, I have all this, and then you go to one room, and then a third of your stuff is gone, and you're like, oh, I got to use this now. Okay, let's figure out how we do this. And then you're like, okay, well, I took care of that. And you go to the next room, and then it took a third of your other stuff. So now you have to use the other kinds of stuff that you have left. And it's really interesting. And I thought that was actually a cool mechanic that they did. Because using the same thing over and over, I could see it would get very boring. And the fact that they want you to test your skill or test your knowledge of what these things can be used for, I think is really interesting and really a good idea.
There's like some situations because that's why like Breath of the Wild is like very interesting compared to the rest of the Zelda series. As I'm playing Wind Waker, I've been like using the random items for like different situations that I haven't used them before, and it just makes the game a lot more interesting to get through. Like there are some situations like, oh, you have to use the grapple hook, but in my mind, I'm looking at the level. I was like, oh, I could probably just use the Deku Leaf instead, and then I can still get through the level. But that's the funny thing about the mainline Zelda games before Breath of the Wild is where they force you to use that one new weapon or item you got in the dungeon for the entire dungeon just so you can get like just so you can get used to it and like know like all the tricks you can do with it. But in the Breath of the Wild, it's like you get everything that you would need for the rest of the game at the very start of the game, or at least after the tutorial, and then you just use it for the rest of the game, and you just have to remember like how it works, when to use it, and what you can use it for. So it's just like the two parts of like a Zelda series games is like between those two. There's like one like period you get one new thing periodically that you will use every once and again, and then the other one was just get everything from the beginning, and then you just use it however you want and when you want because you just have it right at start.
Now, when it comes to straight puzzle games, I haven't played very many. The one that sticks out of my head the most, and I consider it a puzzle platformer, was Limbo. I really liked Limbo, and what was it? It was a game that was also within the vein of Limbo. The one where you turned into like this giant meatball monster at the end of it.
Oh,
Can't
the
remember what
Inside.
inside.
Inside, yeah. I really like those. It's a lot of the same thing though. It's like your repertoire is like very basic. You can jump and you can push and pull things, and then you might get a small ability depending on where you're at to control something else. If in inside specifically, you get to control other people via this like mind control hat. Again, I feel like those ones were a bit more fun because kind of like Jordan, I don't think I would be able to play through something like Myst. Maybe I think I could sit through it, but I definitely wouldn't seek it out. Something very kind of like dry puzzle, I guess I would describe it. I need something with a bit more something to almost disguise the flavor of the puzzle. You know what I'm saying? Like something something to hide the fact it's
Right.
actually a puzzle.
Yeah.
So I don't think I could sit down and play like Myst or that is actually a relatively new game that came out that I saw a lot of people liked was called like The Blueprints or something like that. And that game is like almost a roguelike puzzle thing or something like that. It's a lot of like riddle solving, but that's all the game is going from room to room solving riddles.
I haven't played it yet, but based on what I did see, it's basically different rooms, but they're each working like an escape room fashion, and you just have to try and make your way through to the next one. And then
Yeah.
as you're building each room, you basically just make a house.
Well, I guess that's a good question because Corey, I know you like doing escape rooms. I don't know how many you've done with them, Edwin. Probably would imagine at least some you've done with them. But is that why you like escape rooms? You like the challenge of the puzzle within them, and do you always think they're fair? It's like is it mostly like logic puzzles and stuff like that? And do you seek that kind of puzzle out within video games as well?
For escape rooms, like theme is really important. Some I've done some where it just feels like they kind of mailed it in, where it's just like find the key, and most of them are find combos and stuff. I think the last one that we did was pretty. You're stuck. You're trying to get into the dean's office or whatever to change your grades or something like that. So you actually have to do some interesting puzzles where there's like a globe, and then you have to use like the markings on the globe to like position some stuff, and it utilized the environment a lot more for context clues of solving the puzzle, which is really cool, and it's kind of what I was getting at before in the previous stuff. But logic puzzles I also don't mind because I do seek out some puzzle games, I guess. What is it, Brain Age or something? That was the DS one.
Hmm.
I played that a lot. I played through Little Nightmares, which
Little Nightmares
it's
good.
puzzle platformer. Every survival horror game. I think that for me, a big portion of the puzzle is going to be like how much is it going to make me think on solving it. I do like logic puzzles just because they are a little bit more. There's like a correct answer, right? I mean, and when you're looking at puzzles in general, like there's a correct answer, but like with a logic puzzle, it's like there's only one answer to this, and usually if it's like math based or something, it's like okay, this is kind of fun to me. And a lot of the times when we do go to escape rooms, it's kind of funny because it'll just be like, all right, uh, Corey, come look at this. And it's like, okay. But there's some that I'm just like, I have no fucking idea, and a lot of the times it's just because of at least in the context of an escape room, it's like I want to get this thing off the wall, but I know that they don't want me to the wall.
Mhm.
you know,
I
uh,
know how to escape the escape room. Start breaking shit.
yeah.
They'll get you
See
out
my
real
previous
fast.
statement of James breaking doors down. Yeah, the
Yeah.
also something I wanted to say about earlier. We were talking about puzzles that utilize all of your abilities as the game goes. I think that that's good for puzzle design because it kind of breeds for more complex puzzles and interesting ways to solve things. Because when you just kind of utilize one mechanic, and then when you introduce a new mechanic, you stop utilizing the other mechanic. Like I understand getting a player to get used to using, let's say, a hook shot, for example, or a boomerang, but when you start getting into the game and it's like, well, here's a puzzle that requires both of those things, and then it's like now this one requires three things. Now you don't want to overload them and be like, this is a puzzle that uses everything in your arsenal that you've acquired throughout the entire game. Like that is kind of that would feel more tedious than anything. But when you start combining three different mechanics, it's kind of nice. And you can almost say that like Metroidvanias kind of unlock the map in that way, where you get a new ability which grants you the um, traversal mechanic to get into something else, whether it's double jump or a dive bomb to break through the floor or something like that. But it's not just an attack move, it also can do this thing, and it gets you into areas. And then you get into an area and you fight a boss that's, might be the latest mechanic that you have, but it also is weak against maybe the first thing you found in the game. I think that that kind of helps design situations a lot better. And I sometimes people just forget their own mechanics because they're so focused on the newest things. Maybe for me, that's more frustrating is getting a mechanic at the end of the game that seems really, really fun to use, but you either get it after you've beaten the game or you get it right when you go to beat the game and use it only on the last boss.
I agree with what you said, but I guess I don't want the question to be misconstrued. I didn't wasn't saying like is it bad for the game not to ask the player to use these things? I guess I kind of worded it wrong. It was more like I feel like I was like should the game wait till like the climax before asking everything of the player, or like I said, because like I said in this Temple of Gods, if that's the only instance where I have to use the Deku Leaf in this entire dungeon, why even have it? Why can't it just be a dungeon revolving around the grapple hook, the bombs, and the bow
Oh
and
yeah,
arrow? And
yeah.
it's like so like, and if I get to the end of this, that was the only time I had to use the Deku Leaf. I'm kind of annoyed because it's like, well, yeah, of course. Why would I think to use the Deku Leaf if not the rest of this entire dungeon ever used it except for outside this one part?
Yeah, I think that that's a huge part on like the puzzle designers is if you're going to do something, I mean, rule of three is kind of big in games anyways, but if you're designing a dungeon and you're going to have a bunch of different puzzles, and then this one is the only one that operates on this one mechanic, and then everything else just kind of abandons that, then it's like, well, you could have just kind of made another interesting one utilizing the other mechanics instead of just throw this one time I'm going to use the leaf in there and then set it
Yeah,
aside for
it's here
something
for
else.
the sake of being here,
You couldn't
essentially.
think of something else, and that's why this exists. That's
Yeah.
how I'm reading. It's a lazy puzzle, I guess.
And I actually just thought of something in Ocarina of Time that kind of annoyed me. When you're in Ganon's castle, when you're doing like the mini rooms that represent each of the temples you already did, I remember in the Forest Temple, you have to burn some spider webs, I believe. And you specifically, and up until this point, anytime you needed to like shoot an arrow with fire on it, there was always like a convenient torch nearby that you could shoot through the torch and it'll burn whatever you needed to burn. But this is the only part of the game you needed fire arrows for that I didn't get because they're optional. They're not set out in front of you.
You have to
And I
still
found that
find.
really aggravating having to leave the climax of the game, go back and get the fire arrows, and come back to do this one specific thing with them, and that's it.
Oh, because
Yeah,
I think it's because you technically have two sources of fire in Ocarina of Time. Because you have Din's fire, which is just like this explosion of fire
Yeah,
when
that
Link
would have
doesn't
worked
move.
too.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then the fire arrows. I don't think I the first time I beat Ocarina of Time I even had the ice arrows. Were those even mandatory?
No, they're not. But that's my point exactly. The fire arrows and Din's fire are both off the beaten path as kind of bonuses, essentially. And Zelda has lots of those. It's just like extra little bonus shit.
Oh no,
This is
the
the only
Din's
time.
fire is required, I think, because that's how you get into Shadow Temple. Because
You know
there's like
what?
many torches around, and you have to. The only thing that can hit all the torches at once was Din's fire.
Was it that?
yeah.
Yeah. Well, either way, because I felt like I tried using Din's fire, but it didn't work. Maybe I'm just crazy, but either way, I guess it kind of leads into just a minor point that if a game is gonna have puzzles and you need specific items to solve them, those items should always just be thrown in the path of the player. I shouldn't have to like go on an entire separate optional, like seemingly optional side quest in order to obtain something I need. Anytime, like that's why I appreciate Zelda. When I get to someplace, I know I have everything I need in order to accomplish my goal here. I should never have to feel like I have to leave, go out, figure something else out, and come back. That's really aggravating.
Yeah.
There was a point in Portal where it's like as the game goes on, it introduces new mechanics and new items for you to use in each room. You obviously can't take the items with you in each room, but it just like the room provides you with the items that you're going to use in it. And then and once you leave or come into a new room, all your portals deactivate just to start over. But I know there was one level where near the end where it basically required you to solve this one room with almost every single mechanic that was in every other previous room, and it just took a very long while for me to figure that one out because it was like I have so much stuff to work with, and I'm don't know like where each one goes or if I even need to use all of this. But it's like every time I think of Portal, it's like I always think of that one level because it was like one of the hardest things in like both of the games that I had to do.
I think Portal is an enigma for me because I really like Portal and Portal 2, and those both fit into like a physics-based puzzle and just kind of a puzzle game for puzzle game's sake. I almost don't even consider it a puzzle platformer. Yeah, there's a bunch of movement in it, but it's mostly just thinking. Once you have everything set up, they fall over like dominoes. But it's just very satisfying, and I don't know. There's just like Portals. I forget what the engine's called. That Steam uses for their games. Anyone remember? It's the same. It's the one they use for Left 4 Dead, Team Fortress, fucking
Source.
Source, the Source engine. It's just
Uh,
that engine is like really good for physics-based stuff because I don't know, whatever they do in Portal makes it work really well. Where it's almost like I never had the issue of like, oh, I was doing the right thing, it was just slightly off, sort of thing. It always just seemed to work well, especially for a game where you have to like throw that damn box around and hit buttons with it and shit, and have to knock over turrets and whatnot. So I don't know, it was done exceedingly well to the point where it didn't bother me. And it's Portal is probably one of my favorite puzzle games of all time. In fact, one of the few puzzle games that I will go out and play because I'm kind of like most other people. I don't really go after puzzles. I don't mind them being in games. I do find them more annoying than most because sometimes, especially in a game that usually doesn't have. Again, I find it annoying in God of War, a game about just fucking killing shit in an action game. It's like, all right, now kick the rocks. I'm like, I don't want to though. It's boring and
Think,
slow. I
meathead,
want to stab.
think.
Yeah. Me big dumb stabby brain. Don't want to do think brain right now. But yeah, as far as puzzles go, because I mean, are you like I know you put out on our channel recently, Corey, about your first devlog about your horror game. Are you planning on putting puzzles in a game like that, or is it mostly going to be about combat? I mean, you don't have to make any promises for the future. I
Yeah.
was just curious,
Yeah.
especially because we had a lot of survival horror talk here, so I was just curious.
Yeah, I mean, I've played
It's-
a lot of them, so it's kind of I'm just when I sit back to go, what could I do here? It's just I think back to tons of reference, which is kind of nice. That in JRPGs, but JRPGs puzzles are not; those aren't usually complicated. Those
They're
JRPG
really
puzzles
not.
are usually just like grab this item and then bring it to the thing and put it in that thing, and then now you can leave the dungeon.
Yeah, or you might just
And-
have to answer a question correctly. Like I
Or
was
fight a
trying to think
boss.
about. Yeah, the puzzle is the boss.
Yeah.
Well,
I guess
I was
I get
thinking about it, I was like, I don't think trivia counts as a puzzle.
no,
like
not
trivia
really.
questions.
I mean, it's still it makes you think, but yeah, I wouldn't really count that as a puzzle either. Sometimes you can have a boss that is technically a puzzle where you have to do something specific in the fight in order to
Yeah.
like break
Oh
through his
my
defenses.
god! I just realized when you said that the new Avatar game is like that, where it's like you don't even fight the boss. It's just a series of puzzles where it's like, oh, solve this puzzle to do damage to the boss, and it's just like that over and over again. I guess a set of three, and like the rule of three, and it was like, oh, the boss is defeated. It was like you solve puzzles to kill the boss or whatever. It's like I know that was like one of the major complaints for new Avatar Last Airbender game that was
Okay, so-
released.
That was gonna be my question. I'm like, so when you say Avatar, you have two options here.
No,
Um,
because it's funny. It's like that. There's like that's like there's like a series of Last Airbender games, and I still remember like the one that me and Angie had when like the PlayStation 2 was like that was like an actual like 3D beat 'em up game, and then it was like you had this one that was like actually like decently popular at the time for like the PS2, and then like like the Last Airbender was like a really popular show, and then years down the line you give us this garbage that no one really that like people wanted, but it's like you fucked it up so bad, and then you put the puzzles in the boss fight. It's like the rest of the game is like not even that great, so it's like the fact that you can double down on your own idiotic ideas, it's like just compared to like all the like the past years of the games you could have learned from. I was like, that was your deal breaker. No, that's like straight up unacceptable.
Well, alrighty then. I think we've reached the end of our rope in terms of talking about puzzles today. So, unless anyone has anything else last to say about puzzles, I think Jordan can take us out.
All right.
Nope.
All right.
Going twice. No? Okay then.
All right, well, I guess we'll be wrapping it up today. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify, Twitter, YouTube, and our Rumble channel so you never miss an episode. And for all you gamers out there, just remember to keep exploring, keep playing, keep listening. Until next time, it's the Mediocre Rumble Brothers podcast signing off. Thanks for listening.
Hey, this is Corey, and thanks for checking out Mediocre Rumble Brothers. If you liked the video, please drop a like, and if you didn't, that's fine too. If you'd like us to talk about any specific games, drop a comment below, or feel free to discuss your experience with the games that we've mentioned in the episode. You can also listen to our episodes prior to YouTube on our Spotify. Thanks for watching, and hope to see you again soon.